Welcome back. This is Insight, and today we are asking whether we are really prepared for any earthquakes, God forbid they occur. Well, we know that the NDRF is doing very good work, but as Mr. Singh mentioned, that there are still a lot of loopholes. There are a lot of, there's still many challenges to be met. So, how difficult is it for you all, Mr. Guleria?
I agree. There are shortcomings, but the degree of preparedness it varies. It is a never-ending process.
Correct.
You cannot say that I am fully prepared for any kind of disaster. So, I take it in this way that yes, there are shortcomings, and we have been apprising the higher echelon that yes, they should meet our requirement. They should look after the NDRF, because NDRF has a greater role to play in the present scenario, in the future. So, all the problems which have been brought out by ex-member NDMA, those are yes, those are existing, and government is in the picture, and we hope that they are going to address all these problems. Yes, but at the same time, I must say that a lot of good has also been done.
Absolutely.
If you look at the kind of work which NDMA has done, so you may condemn any authority by simply the one kind of disaster. But if you look at the kind of policies, the guidelines, the SOPs, the instructions which have been created by the NDMA, those are those are very good. Those are being followed by the neighboring country. It has been appreciated word over, that kind of work which NDMA has done in terms of institutionalize the system. The creating the framework in the country. Even if NDMA if NDRF is today at this level, it is because of whom? It is because of NDMA. And I must appreciate here today, Mr. KM Singh, he has been associated right from the beginning since 2005, and the kind of passion which he has shown for upgrading the standard of these organizations, I must salute to him. And to say that yes, the retired bureaucrats are not to be brought in, I don't agree. It varies from person to person.
Correct. According to the rich experience that they carry.
You find the professional people, and government must recognize that yes, there are professionals, and their services should be best utilized for the nation.
Absolutely.
That's what I would like to say.
Right. So, Mr. Thakur, what is your response to this? We were talking about political will, and also I think what Mr. Singh mentioned are these are very small things that can be taken care of, like say equipments, or say the helicopters, or the coordination between the Air Force and the NDRF. So these are not something that cannot be done, which cannot be achieved. But the thing is, we have to have the will to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, there is no doubt that NDMA is a useful institution.
Correct.
And it needs to play, it's playing some good role, it needs to play more. NDRF is definitely the best output of NDMA. And NDRF is of course manned by military personnel, so that's a positive point. Most large number paramilitary personnel. Yeah. But lastly, I think see we have to look at, for example, you are talking about earthquake. Now, one of the things that you require in earthquake is, for example, accelerograms, which tells you that what is the ground movement at different points of time because of the earthquake. And if you have those accelerograms functioning, then you can force shocks. Every earthquake is generally preceded by certain force shocks. Now, force shocks can tell you that there is a possibility that this region can now have earthquake.
Right.
And looking at the concentration or the location of the force shocks again can give you a hint that there is a possibility of this location is likely to. So there is some developing science. But in India, for example, none of the accelerograms are working now. Take another factor, the floods. One of the things that flood is that in case of flash floods, you need a Doppler radar, which can tell you at least 24 hours in advance that which specific area can have high rainfall event, which can then lead to landslides and flash floods. Now, landslide maps are known. So, based on those and the possibility of specific area getting possibility of rain, you can prepare the area. But we have no Doppler radars were functioning in those areas. Take the third thing about GPS instruments.
Yes.
Now look at GPS instrument. Nepal is ill prepared, but it has 300 to 400, and India has hardly 20 to 30 of them. So, you know, there are many institutes, and what Nepal has done is they have asked that they have included NGOs and academic institutions.
Okay.
And so they are also having a lot of GPS. So they are also feeding into this system.
So everybody is coordinating properly.
Take flood forecasting. When both in case of Uttarakhand flood and J&K floods, the Central Water Commission, which is our premier institute in charge of flood forecasting, did not predict any floods. In both instances. So, you know, there are a lot of instances. For example, take the case of the Kosi floods of 2008, August 2008. When the embankment breached, the flow in the river was less than 1.5 lakh cusecs. It was equipped to take 9 lakh cusecs, but just because it was not properly maintained, it breached at such a low flow. Now, if it was properly maintained, if there was system to ensure that this functioned. So, you know, all these cases, what we are saying is that institutions, equipments, infrastructure, all of this has to be functional situation. Now, and that is possible also if there is independent public oversight. That's why I talked. I don't say that retired bureaucrats should not be there at all. What I am saying is that you also need independent people, because retired bureaucrats normally tend to toe government line. They don't take independent position generally. There are always exceptions.
Correct.
But in general, so we also need independent minded people. So, you know, in all these institutions, that creates a force of public pressure, which is what is required in creating political will you are talking about. So, you know, lot of this, for example, Uttarakhand floods. The Supreme Court asked a committee said that yes, in Uttarakhand flood disaster, lot of under construction and operating projects played a big role.
Right.
Now, if that is the situation, then we need to take hazard potential assessment of each of these projects, a policy matter. Ensure that before we take up the project, we do hazard potential assessment.
Correct.
And we also assess how this project intervention is going to change that, and ensure that, for example, Uttarakhand has a disaster management mitigation center, DMMC, which said after the Ukhimat disaster of September 2012, that for no development activities in Uttarakhand, there should be blasting. If you do blasting, it increases the landslide potential,
Right.
and most of Uttarakhand is landslide prone. But even in road building, tunneling, dam building, there is massive blasting going on, totally unregulated, which is going to increase the disaster
Absolutely,
potential.
absolutely.
So, you know, lot of these things. For example, buildings. It is known
This
that
is what I wanted to come down to, you know, because town planners or city planners, I think this is something that we now need to pay attention to. As far as some high-rise apartments which are coming all over the country, they say that, okay, these are earthquake resistant. But most of our country, people are building houses on their own. And I don't think anybody is going and taking, the actual sanctions or the permissions that, okay, whether you are complying by all those rules and regulations or not. So which means, Mr. Singh, that this chalta hai attitude is finally catching up with us.
The most valid point that you have raised. Well, we talk of national building plan and earthquake buildings and all. Now, the basic issue is that unless the mindset is changed of the government, of people in the government, the regulatory bodies, the builders and the users, everybody should be conscious that we are in zone 4 or zone 5, what sort of building we need. But that's number one. But main point is, even if you have everything, do you have trained structural engineers who know how to make earthquake-proof buildings? Number one. Number two, do you have trained people in the NDMC or MCD or in other corporation who can certify that's an earthquake-proof building? So it's all on paper, all right, but where are the trained people? It's not only confined only to the urban areas. Go to the rural areas.
Absolutely.
All the buildings in the rural areas or district headquarters are non-engineered buildings made by masons who just make small buildings without those. So it's a very big issue. Now, and it's a very valid point, and I want to explain my views on that. As I mentioned, the National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project for the cyclone East Coast has made a quantum difference in the level of preparedness. Similarly, NDMA prepared long back National Earthquake Risk Mitigation Project. It's again a very visionary project where all sort of capacity building of the all the existing engineers, overseers, then the people in the MCD, everybody will be trained on that. They must know, training of trainer program train, so that they know, first of all, because they must know. Secondly, at the village level, the masons have to be trained.
Right.
What sort of, if he are trained for 7 days, he will not come for training. So give him 7 days wage.
Absolutely.
And also incentive that if you have trained mason in our local district level work, we will give a priority. He will get trained. So that capacity building is very important. And there are many other things. So my point is that the government, if it's serious, the political will, the National Earthquake Risk Mitigation Project should be in place, so that capacity building, everything is there. That's the most important thing. It's not there.
Right. Mr. Thakkar, and also to add to that, whichever government comes into power, the first thing their vote bank lies in the non-authorized colonies and all that. And the first thing that they want to do is regularize them. So actually, they're making people sit on a time bomb. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of these areas which are in zone 4 and 5, for example, whole of Northeast is in zone 5. You go from Agartala to Aizawl, you go from Gangtok to Guwahati, you go from Shillong to Sylhet, everywhere. But those areas, I will differ from Mr. Munshi in saying that not all rural buildings are bad.
Okay.
For example, Assam, there is a technology of building both flood-proof and earthquake-proof buildings.
I guess he meant largely.
Largely.
Yes,
but there are also such techniques which we can learn from that.
Right.
And those needs to be appropriated for that. For example, those techniques of Assam were used in some of the Sikkim buildings, and those were saved in 2011 Sikkim disaster, whereas a lot of concrete buildings broke. So, there are lessons we can learn also from traditional technologies. So, but he is absolutely right in the sense that whole of Northeast India, in fact, there was a recent UNDP assessment in just one city of Aizawl, and we said that in this city, 72,000 buildings will crack even if a 7+ earthquake comes, whereas that region can experience 8+ earthquake. So, there is no doubt that we are ill prepared in terms of building codes, building technologies and structural engineers.
Right. Quick response to this, Mr. Guleria, before we go into a break.
Yes, my response is that yes, I agree. There have been shortcomings. I take it. I would like to look it from other angle also. That we need to inculcate, that sense of patriotism, honesty, and especially a more humanitarian kind of attitude in all the regulatory bodies. Here, what I mean to say that if in my country, if there is no corruption at various level, you may find that the quality of construction will surely going to improve.
Correct.
That is a big factor. Yes, the government, the new government, or the state government, Delhi also, they have, that honesty is their main agenda, that yes, it should be a corruption free. So, let us look a better future. So, you may find that the buildings which are going to come in future will sustain this kind of earthquake. That is number one. And at the same time, we need to do a lot. How we can do? I look the preparedness from two angles. One is the preparedness in terms of the policy making, designing and everything. Okay, there we are comfortable. We have made a lot of guidelines, we have made a lot of policies. But the second part comes the implementation.
Absolutely.
The implementation part is very important, and how implementation is to be done. Now, this implementation can only be possible that all stakeholders, all who are affected, and it is not the responsibility of only the government. I would like to say that the public in general, they are also confined into this implementation plan.
Correct.
And how public can give their best? They can give their best only if they are trained, if they are made aware, if they are sensitized, and how it can be done.
Absolutely. I'm going to come back to that, Mr. Guleria, because you've raised a very pertinent point, and he's absolutely right that this cannot just be on the shoulders of the government, because you and I also have to play our parts, and positively. But how are we going to do that? Are we going to break down all our buildings and make them again? No. But can we strengthen them? Well, these are few points that we are going to discuss after this short break. So don't go away, as we'll all see you on the other side. Well, Mr. Guleria, you were talking about policy making and its implementation, and also about the role that the public needs to play. So you can just elaborate on that quickly.
Yeah, that's very right. You know, the public has to be made aware. They have to be made trained. Now, how it can be done? It is basically, you know, the advocacy that yes, we have to make the community in large disaster resilient. We need a resilient India toward the disaster. Now, how it can be done? It can be done by way of creating awareness, by way of sensitizing the people, by way of training them. There is a difference in awareness and sensitization and the training.
Correct.
Because training and awareness or the community capacity building programs, etc., these are the open-ended kind of programs. But training has got a definite aim. That yes, if you are training a person, he is trained for a specific job. So we need to train maximum number of people. That has to be done. If that is done, if each and every person is aware, know that yes, this is what is expected from him, how he can or she can ensure that his house is safe in case of disaster, what action, what drill should be followed. People should be made aware that yes, what is the family disaster management plan. The community should know that what are the RWA they should do their plan of action, but the village disaster management plan should be there. You may be prepared up to any extent, but whenever there will be a disaster like earthquake, which is called unpredictable disaster, a government or the government machinery will take some time to react.
So the local people are going to respond
3 to 4 years. 3 to 4 hours. So who will take care for this kind of period? It is the person who is a victim, it is his or her family member, it is the community around, it is the local government over there. They have to react. And unless they are taught, they are trained, they are not going to react. They cannot be able, they would not be able to save them. And it is here that comes the role of the public and the role of the government also. Now it has to be bottom up as well as top down approach. So it has to be an integration of this. Now if school children are taught, you know, that yes, there should be, though a lot of school safety programs are going on in our country,
yes.
That is there, then we are targeting the community also, they are being trained. Even NDRF, when we are not engaged in disasters, we have this motto that yes, resilient India, and whatever best we can significantly contribute in making India resilient, we are doing our best.
Absolutely.
So this is a very, very important side, very, very important factor where we need to address. Unless each and every person of our country is aware, then it is going to make a lot of difference. Now here I would like to bring in your notice that, you know, in our country, if disaster comes, if we lose people, it would be very bad. There will be a lot of hue and cry in the media also. But there is one kind of disaster which we are seeing daily in our country every year. As per National Record Bureau, 137,000 people are dying in the road accident. 137,000, and 5 times are getting injured because of the road accident. And more than 20 billion economy of our country is getting lost because of these disasters.
Right.
Now why it is happening? Because we need to make people aware, we need to educate them. Life is very important.
Absolutely.
We need to ensure that, you know, that the corruption, I must say here, that yes, if some agency is issuing license to the people, those should not be issued. I must say that yes, every person should be disciplined. If all our system work in a very, very disciplined manner, you may find that there would be no disaster. If you look at our astronomical system, you know, all planets are moving. They have got their definite route, their definite timings. So we need to be disciplined. We need to be corruption-free country. We need to be very honest. We are supposed to be very duty-bound in our actions. So all these things are required. Then only that is the way we can address these problems.
That's right. And you, I'm glad that you mentioned the media, because sometimes the media gets into an overreactive mood and starts predicting on its own, which in the long run, you know, sends panic waves down the people. So I think that is also something that the media has to look at. So you want to make a comment on that quickly? Yes.
Okay. Media is a very important tool, I must say, which can educate the society, masses, in a very bigger way. But that is required to be done. How it can be done? First of all media agencies, the channels, they are required to be trained.
Correct.
in the disaster management. They should know what disaster management is. That is
and how it is to be reported.
How it is to be reported.
That's really
Many
important.
times if you go to the channels, you may find a person who is asking questions or going heavy. So this problem is required to be addressed. Each and every government must make some kind of regulations that yes, each and every media must give its prime time on disaster management issues. Those
And
are to be
educating
discussed.
the public.
It should not be discussed when there is a disaster. It should be a regular affairs. It should be a regular practice.
I agree with
so
you on
media
that
has
one.
to play a very, very important role.
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Singh, we were talking about the existing buildings. Now, suppose the building that you and I are living in, I'm not really sure whether they are earthquake resistant at all. Now, what can be done to those buildings? Do you have any ideas for the public?
It has many aspects. One is that all the earlier building, the structural safety can be assessed and retrofitting is possible.
Okay, so retrofitting
If you see our NDMA building in Subjung Enclave, I don't know whether you have seen that. That building was a 4-story, 50 years old building, dilapidated building. We are not allowed to demolish. So we have done the complete retrofitting of the building, and that building, any intensity earthquake, nothing will happen. Retrofitting, but it's expensive, no doubt about it. Now the point is, first thing is that when you talk of every building cannot be done retrofitted.
Right.
But what we call lifeline buildings, and those like hospitals, schools, colleges, railway station, all of the big crowded public places, district magistrate office, they are crowded buildings. Now these are the buildings which must be retrofitting must be done. And for two reasons. Number one, it's very crowded. Number two, when Bhuj earthquake happened, the hospital collapsed there. And so where to get injured patients?
Exactly.
So hospital is very important. So these are lifeline buildings, and there is a particular category of all these whatever be the expenditure of the government, these are all government buildings, lifeline building must be retrofitted. But second is, now I recently read 2 days ago after Nepal earthquake, the Delhi Disaster Development Management Authority had come up with a plan where people can go and access. They are going to create some specialized agency. They can go to them. They can request for the structural safety of the building and suggestion whether I can get what needs to be done. Now that is very important. Other point I would like to mention in this also, that is very important. Mr. Guleria mentioned a very valid point about the school safety. There is a study which shows, and it's in California in 1935 there is a major earthquake after that. That shows if the earthquake is in night time, the casualty is the highest because people are sleeping inside.
Right.
If it's in daytime, it's less because people are out.
Can run out.
But if it is up to forenoon session, then maximum casualty in the school because school buildings are fragile and large number of people, boys, they get killed. So we have a national school safety program, and that is very, very important. That is on paper very little being done. That needs to be done. That's also very, very important thing.
True.
And lastly, community preparedness mentioned. See, we say community is the first responder. Community preparedness, community awareness is the best thing. I can say Singapore is one of the best prepared country. There is a very, very vibrant civil defense organization in Singapore, and every man in Singapore has to go to the civil defense training so that they know what is going to happen. Right. We have also civil defense. They have been given a role in the disaster management, but it's a defunct organization. But by the government policy, the community awareness program, community capacity building program is very, very important if we want to make India disaster resilient.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Thakkar, final comments. What do you want to say here at the end after all this discussion that has happened?
Yeah, I'll just make two broad comments. One is in the context of Nepal, I think the major focus has been on Kathmandu. There are a large part of remote areas which has not been attended to. And there people, even if they are saved because the buildings did not collapse or they were kacha buildings, they are so inaccessible, they possibly will die because of lack of some injuries or lack of food or lack of water and attention. So those areas needs to be attended to. And secondly, I want to make a broad remark that, see, in the context of climate change and in the context of these earthquake prone areas, it's a very dangerous mix actually. Because in the context of climate change, our rainfall pattern is totally changing. We have much greater frequency of high intensity rainfall, which can bring flash floods and landslides. Yesterday there was a massive landslides in Alaknanda. 50 meters of road has collapsed, 150 meters of road has been totally blocked because of that, and 700 people had to be airlifted just yesterday, last night.
Right.
So there is, and this whole of Himalayan region is prone to this kind of things. So we need to have our building practices, whether it is roads, whether it is houses, whether it is other major structures like dams and hydropower projects. We need to have hazard potential assessment, and lastly, we need to assess that what is the situation with respect to vulnerability in currently. For example, river needs, for example, Uttarakhand, what happened? We saw buildings collapsing. Where was those buildings? All of them were practically on the riverbed. So river doesn't have path to flow, then it will find and create disaster. So we need to give river paths to flow. So a lot of this policy related issues, potential assessment related issues, and in all this, as you said, community need to be involved.
I think that's the final point, that community needs to be involved. Well, on that note, I'd like to say thank you to three of you for coming today and for talking extensively about this situation. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So, well, folks, we have got to get our act together and stop meddling with nature. And as far as earthquakes are concerned, there are many steps that we can and must take as preventive measures. Rectify the buildings that need to be strengthened. The new ones must comply with all the safety standards. Awareness campaigns must be carried out on various media, and people must cooperate at all levels. Because one can never be prepared enough if a disaster in the shape of an earthquake ever strikes. And let the community also participate. You and I have a job to do. So remember when and how to do it. So let's wake up and act wisely. On that note, it's a wrap of this discussion. Thank you so much for watching.